Okay. Welcome, everybody, to this evening's regular council meeting. At this time, I'll lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move for adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Been moved
First, I
second.
moved the adoption. Second. Sorry.
Okay, it's been moved to second. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passed unanimously. On to proclamations. I've asked Councilmember Bodie to read the first proclamation. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Whereas while considerable progress has been made in the fight against breast cancer, it remains the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of death among women in the United States. And whereas every 2 minutes a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, and 30% of new women's cancer diagnoses will be for breast cancer. And whereas 1 out of every 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer during her lifetime. And whereas in 2023, an estimated 297,790 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in women in the US, and 55,720 new cases of non-invasive breast cancer. And whereas men can also get breast cancer, and an estimated 2,800 men will be diagnosed with it in 2023. And whereas there are more than 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the United States, including women still being treated and those who have completed treatment. And whereas as we display pink ribbons, wear pink clothing, and our police department wears pink patches and badges to raise awareness, we also support those in our community who are courageously fighting breast cancer and honor the lives lost to the disease. And whereas this October, we recognize breast cancer survivors, those battling the disease, their families and friends who are a tireless source of love and encouragement, and applaud the efforts of our medical professionals and researchers working to find a cure for this deadly disease. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education, early detection, prevention, and regular screening. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Lake Forest Park. And I commend this observance to all citizens and encourage all women and men to learn more about this disease. Signed this 12th day of October 2023, Jeff Johnson, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. With that, I'm going to read the Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas October is recognized as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month that was first begun in 1981 by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence as a day of unity to connect battered women's advocates across the country. And whereas domestic violence is a pattern of physical, emotional, verbal, and/or sexual abuse, which includes, but is not limited to, threats, intimidation, isolation, and/or financial control. And whereas domestic violence is an intentional pattern of behavior that is used by one person to harm and take power and control over another person in the context of a date, family, roommate, or caretaker relationship. And whereas domestic violence is an epidemic affecting individuals in every community, regardless of age, economic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. Whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men in the United States are victims of domestic violence, and a woman is likely killed by a spouse, ex-spouse, or a dating partner every 74 hours in America. And whereas 1 in 15 children is exposed to domestic violence each year, and 90% of these children are eyewitness to this violence. And whereas the City of Lake Forest Park remains committed to a professional response to incidents of domestic violence in our region, now therefore the mayor and the City Council of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Lake Forest Park, and call upon all community members to speak out against domestic violence and support local efforts to assist victims of these crimes in finding the help and healing they need. Signed this 12th day of October 2023, Mayor Jeff Johnson. Thank you, council. We got a lot to think about this month. And we're going to be bringing up we have citizens' comments first. And you pay note to the pink patches with the chief, and thank you, chief, and the police department for all you do.
Good stars too.
Whoa, geez. You see that?
I think it was delivered.
Yeah, I did too. Jack Tonkin. Welcome, Jack.
Oh, it's been a while. We still have that 3-minute ticker. I hate. So you're just going to have to shut me off. I just want to talk about the budget. I've been looking at it for some time, and I attended your meeting tonight. And I'm concerned. For example, you had a 6-year forecast in the last one I was looking at, where you were looking at it tonight, and you were underwater in 2025 or so. And now you've got one now that shows you are out of the woods. But it's pretty disingenuous because you've used a static number under 6% of all your forecasting to get to that number. It's a phony number. When you look at what you're really doing with your budgets, and you go through the line items of departments, you have a percent change ranging anywhere from 400% down. Now, I ran a company that we had about 50,000 line items in our budget. And in our review process, we would have never been able to do that without having that percentage extension on the end of each line item, which you now have, which I think is finally worthwhile. Because when you're looking at so many numbers, they are numbers. But when you look at percentages, the percentages tell you something. They tell you that something's happening with that item. And in looking at your history in the last 4 or 5 years, your forecast ability is horrible. When you find that you can not get within a certain percentage under, say, around 10 to 15%, and you're up to 300 or 400%, something's terribly wrong. And what we used to do, and we saw that, is we would call the managers in, and we would ask them to explain to us why this percent's so high as compared to the others. And we'd get to the bottom of it. In your case here, I can give you one example. We were looking at Chief Harden's budget about a year ago, I guess it was, and you had this $90,000 cabinet charge in there. And thanks to Chief Harden, he invited us in to take a look at what he was doing and why it was going to cost so much money. And after an interview and having to look at the facility and his explanation, we were fine. But that's what we used to do in order to find out why these percentages were so bad. And you're looking at percentages and you're still not asking questions. It's just unbelievable that you would not ask questions and want some real proof of what's going on. This forecasting is crazy. And yet you've now got a forecast to get out of the 6-year forecast that was done based on numbers. Now you're projecting, and you have like under 6% average for all the forecasts for the next years in your next year in your budget. And of course, you're out of jail. This now is above the broke line, but it's phony.
Thank you, Jack.
So I would like to have some time with somebody and sit down and go over some of this, because Jeff, you're saying that you don't have no cuts. you've done them all. I did a short review and I found $700,000.
I'm not gonna get into that right now.
So
Thank you.
I'm just appalled by the lack of understanding what it takes to run this, this city.
Thank you.
And so I would like some time with somebody to go over it. And my time is
Way up.
over.
Yep, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, now I don't know how to introduce, I think there's two of you, but you put your yourselves down as Alice and then KCLS and then Alexa. So I'm gonna kind of bet it's Alexa and Alice representing KCLS. How's that?
You are correct.
I'm pretty
Thank
quick,
you.
aren't I? Thank you for coming. We're anxious to hear about the Library Advisory Council.
Yeah, hello, Lake Forest Park City Council. I'm Alice Darnton. I'm the regional manager with the King County Library System for the Alder region, which includes the Lake Forest Park Library. And I'm here with Library Advisory Council member Alexa Johnson to share with you about a part of the library's mission that we are passionate about all the time, but especially now, celebrating the freedom to read. Throughout the month of October, King County Library System is highlighting intellectual freedom, a critical part of the library's mission, vision, and values. King County Library System defines intellectual freedom as the right of everyone to seek out information, ideas, and expressive content of any kind within the law. Libraries are committed to facilitating and safeguarding equitable access, privacy, and an extensive range of constitutionally protected opinions, perspectives, and viewpoints. The First Amendment protects the right to freedom of speech, which includes the freedom to access information. The library aims to be both inclusive and representative of all members of the community, both in our physical spaces and our collections. Library collections include materials about a wide range of topics that some people might deem controversial. A person may exercise their own right to read or view those items as their values direct. Libraries also protect the right of all parents to guide their children through the collections, rather than allowing outside organizations or individuals to determine what is available for your family to access. King County Library System follows a process when materials in our collections are challenged, and an important part of that is a conversation about the library value of intellectual freedom, our selection philosophy and criteria, and how we might redirect the person to materials more suitable to them.
You may have heard about book challenges and bans in the news recently. Nationwide, there has been an increase in challenges to library materials, including a lawsuit which threatened to close the Dayton Public Library in Eastern Washington over concerns about LGBTQ books written for teens. Just a few weeks ago, that library won the suit and has remained open, which is good news for libraries everywhere. What can you do to help prevent book bans and celebrate the freedom to read? You can use your local libraries, talk to library workers about intellectual freedom, join the Friends of the Library, attend library and school board meetings when intellectual freedom is an agenda topic, and sign the Freedom to Read statement. We also encourage the Lake Forest Park City Council to follow the example of other communities, including the city of Kirkland, by proclaiming October as Celebrating the Freedom to Read Month. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would rather have them been a representing something than on the 3 minutes. So would it be okay if I let the council ask if any questions of them since they came all the way here? Is that okay with you, council? Does anybody have any questions for them? Thank you very much, because I'm very happy with what you guys do. But council, you have any questions? Yeah. Councilmember Fairtime.
Hi, and thank both of you for coming and speaking to us. And this is a really important topic because, as you said, it's not just over someplace in a red state, it's all over the place. So I guess, can you explain a little bit about the mission of the Friends of the Library? What do they do in support of the library events?
Yeah, sure. So the Friends of the Library is a local chapter, an independent 501c3 that's dedicated to raising funds, usually through book sales, for the purposes of supplementing programming. Usually they can spend some money on like giveaways and snacks for programs. They help support library programming, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And most libraries within KCLS do have a Friends of the Library chapter, including the Lake Forest Park.
Any other councilmembers?
Well, this is a real, thanks for coming before us. This is a hugely important topic and it's, I think all of us thought this would be something that'd be sort of isolated and into certain kinds of fringe areas of the country potentially, and it's not. My little 7.5-year-old asked me why people were trying to say certain people couldn't read certain books, and she proudly asserted, I can read anything I want to, which I think is a lesson for all of us. I really believe very strongly that we all need to make sure that we stand up against people that suggest that censorship is okay, and it's because it is absolutely not. It's our constitutional right to read whatever we want, and it's also a human right. So thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody online at this time?
If you wish to address the council, please use the raise hand function.
Yeah, I don't use my.
Yeah, there's a word.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay. Okay, at this time, I think I will call up our next guest, Chief Harden from the City of Lake Forest Park. Welcome, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. And as you can see, I got all the bling going on here for breast cancer awareness. So thank you, Councilmember Bodie, for reading that proclamation. So we do have patches and coins available. Do a little selling there for the research into breast cancer. So tonight, there you go. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Way to go, Matt.
So tonight I'd like to go into a slight deep dive into your police department's specialized or specialty units. I hope through this presentation that we address any concerns and any questions that you may have. I also want to stress that the police department is not asking for money. We've done plenty of that, especially in this MedPI. We over this last year. We're working with the police, the North Sound Police Foundation, and our community by byproduct for help. So let me start off by saying that every time an officer or myself is trying to recruit someone to our police department, without question, specialty or specialized units come up. Basically, what does your police department offer beyond patrol? This is even a question that I ask in my chief interviews of what would you like to do in our police department besides patrol? Besides patrol, besides working patrol, most everyone wants to do other things in their career. This is a major draw for applicants, and this is a huge draw for potential officers. The smaller the department, the less chance you can grow and do other jobs in the PDs. This has been a major problem in competing with large departments that have so many of these options available. So let's dive into Lake Forest Park PD. You will see here that the units investigations, traffic, SWAT, HNT, radar, racer, canine, UAV operator, narcotics, gangs, and marine patrol. Currently, we are down one detective, and the traffic officer is using a regular patrol car and currently assigned as an acting sergeant. HNT was recently filled. 2 officers are the liaison contacts for the racer program. Canine is not filled. UAV operator is not live, and Sergeant Adams will go over that portion. Narcotics and gang units have not been utilized since 2017, and we are currently on contract with King County Marine Patrol. Although I will briefly go over the units, I will be focusing on 4 specific units: the canine, traffic, UAV operator, and marine patrol. I generally like to get through a presentation and answer the questions that you may have, but tonight I wouldn't mind if you interrupted me and asked questions during the presentation, but there's a lot to go over. So investigations. Yes, that is Lieutenant Lehman when she was a detective. And there's Detective Parkin back in the day, and also our current Detective Teschlog. I ran this unit and now Lieutenant Lazanilla runs the investigations unit. And investigations can kind of be broken down into 3 types, different types. First is our own police detectives that are assigned to the specific unit. They work on felony and juvenile cases, persons and property crimes. This is a full-time job, and currently we only have the 1 detective in the unit, and I hope to get another officer in this unit this year. Next is the CSPA MCTF detectives. That's the Major Crimes Task Force with our coalition of small police agencies. This is any officer in our police department that is looking to do investigations if they are eligible, and we currently have 4 officers on the unit. Third is the IFIT KC, which is the Independent Force Investigations Team, King County. And this is the North County agencies that respond to any officer involved shooting that happens in another jurisdiction. Any of our officers that have investigative experience can be on the team, and we have 3 on the team currently. Another specialty unit is our SWAT HNT. Now, North Sound Metro SWAT, we're a partner with. We have 2 units here. One is SWAT, which means Special Weapons and Advanced Training. And our operator is Officer Coleman. And then also attached is the HNT Hostage Negotiation Team. I was on the team, love that job. And Detective Troxel took over for that. And then she left to another police department, and we have Officer Zaboter that just recently tested and was accepted and joined the team. Then other units, we have our Radar Racer unit, and gangs, graffiti, and narcotics unit. The Radar, now Racer unit, has a sergeant and an officer that oversees the program to ensure it runs smoothly with PD staff. Any response plans, navigator schedules, and paperwork kind of go through this unit to make sure that things are going well. When community members are in need of help, they work with the Racer staff to maximize those solutions. We have not had gangs or graffiti unit in several years. We did devote time to this unit with an officer that was responsible for building out intelligence. But we have not had an officer have any interest in doing that or the time to dedicate to the unit. The narcotics unit was made up of 4 to 5 officers and a supervisor that worked narcotic cases. When we began having staff cuts and shortages and the changes in the drugs laws, we don't have this unit working any longer. I was in this unit, particularly used with the canine, and we made several really big arrests and cases. But this was back in the day of marijuana when it was illegal. Canine. I cannot express how awesome this job was. We started the canine program in 2003, 20 years ago. Officer Lazaro proposed the program, and we had our first dog, Dakota. Officer Lazaro lateral to Seattle PD a short time later, about 9 months later, and I took over the unit and ran the dog for 7 years, from 2004 to 2011 with Dakota. After I retired Dakota, Officer Carswell took the position and ran his dog, Hector. Hector ran for 8 years. We retired Hector at a council meeting during COVID, if you remember. Since then, I have not filled the position, and I now have interested officers, and one in particular that is building out a request to fill the spot. We currently have the canine position still budgeted out, but without any funds. So I'm working with the Police Foundation to get a dog and the equipment. I cannot tell you how much the community loves the canine police departments. I did numerous demonstrations at our schools and various events, including National Night Out, especially National Night Out. I just brought the dog, and the dog did all the work. I didn't have to talk and do anything. It was fantastic. The community loves police dogs. It's one of the best jobs I had in the PD. So I'm currently working on a plan to fill this position with these North Sound Police Foundation funds. I have an interested officer that is looking to leave our department for one that has a canine unit. So this unit would be invaluable for officer retention.
Chief, just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
What tasks does the canine trained in these days?
So
It's changed a little.
It's generally narcotics, which my dog did, and Hector, and patrol work, which is basically, I mean, most people think is the bite dog, but it's really more about searching and trying to find people. With the law changes that happened in the last couple of years, a lot of things have become way more restrictive. So it's very rare that you're going to get those bite conditions, but it's more about when people run and the dog finds where they're at and where they're hiding. The dog bark is amazing on patrol. It truly is. I would be on numerous calls, and just the dog barking scared people. And they're like, whatever you need, whatever, just don't let that dog go. And my dog was not a biting dog. It just was a narcotics dog, but it kind of had that deterrent there.
Yeah.
And so there is bomb dogs. We have no need for a bomb dog, no matter what kind of proposal came in here. That's generally used with State Patrol at UW games. Seattle PD has that unit for, clearing different events. But we wouldn't have a purpose there. So we would look more of maybe a narcotics dog, a dual dog, that you can train a dog for dual roles. We would look into those kind of options.
Thank you very much.
Larry. Councilor
Yes.
Philbin.
Yeah, also with the canine, I'm just curious how it works. Does the human partner take care of the dog 24/7?
24/7. I can tell you, I was with my dog for 7 years all the time. I actually can't even think of a time. There's been some handlers that put them up at places for when they go on vacation, but I would go on vacation with my dog too. So it's hard for me to even think of a time when my dog wasn't around because I was on duty 12 hours, 10 hours, and then at home with the dog. So yes, the dog goes home. Some departments do have kennels at their police stations. Like, this is funny, but to me, but Philly PD in Philadelphia, when I visited their police station, they put the dogs in the kennels and then they go home. So there's those kind of things, but most everybody takes them home.
Thanks.
And then when he retired, he was with me all the time too. So,
Oh,
yeah.
it's a cool dog. Yeah.
Yeah, Dakota, oh my gosh, I don't want to start crying, so we're gonna move on. So traffic unit, traffic, everybody's favorite. If there was one complaint from our citizens, it would be traffic. All of the council is acutely aware of the traffic issues in the city. We look at traffic in the 3 E's, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. By addressing these 3 components, engineering, education, enforcement, holistically, traffic safety initiatives aim to create a safer, more efficient traffic environment for everybody on the road. So the police department has done a pretty good job with enforcement over the last 2 decades, the last 20 years, since I've been here, utilizing the motorcycle unit. Over the past several years, and tolling on 520, traffic volume has increased and our staffing has become harder with our PD. So focus on traffic enforcement is definitely needed. We have constantly been moving our traffic officer to a squad to cover the road. I've looked at all of our annual reports and I'm always seeing this bounce back and forth to the traffic unit and back to a squad. I just want to get to a point where the traffic officer can just do traffic all the time, all year long. Because when we do that, they get fantastic results. With the addition of traffic cameras, they are super helpful. But I want to get that traffic motorcycle back on the road. We had a traffic motorcycle for several years, beginning with Officer Kokish back in 2002. And you can see in that news article right there on the screen from 2002. And let me read a quote from the article: "Speeders beware. The Lake Forest Park PD has a new tool to catch you. It's a sleek Harley Davidson King of the Road police motorcycle for $500 a year." And another portion of the article: "Traffic is a major concern for many citizens. Fast traffic and cut through traffic." Does that sound a little familiar? After Officer Kokish, we had a traffic officer, Houston, and then Officer Wingrove. And now after Officer Wingrove retired medically, the motorcycle was never filled because we didn't have any officers with the motorcycle endorsement. I now have about 4 to 5 officers with a motorcycle endorsement. So I do actually have that pool there. The motorcycle is a fantastic deterrent. Everyone here knows that if you see a traffic motorcycle, you're going to slow down. And if you get stopped, you're going to get a ticket. It's almost inevitable. The council has been working on ways to slow traffic down. Our traffic calming program works well. Our traffic cameras are a force multiplier. And I'm working with the North Sound Police Foundation to see if we can get a motorcycle back in our fleet rotations. This is another specialty unit that is a huge incentive for our officers and a great retention tool. So now, yes, Mayor.
Well, let's be realistic. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, you never sped in Lake Forest Park. Everybody in the world knew that. I think I would throw away every camera we got and everything else, and you put 2 more operators out there and you make it known. If you speed through Lake Forest Park, you can get a ticket. And they wrote my dad a letter and said, "Don't drive through our city." Because he'd go to work at 5 in the morning and got tickets. But I've been pulled over on every single type of motorized vehicle in Lake Forest Park.
Are you a speeder?
No, I'm not that way. I was just too young to be driving, but really,
Riding lawnmower.
yeah, it is a different feeling when the officer's lights are behind you. But before, I just got a ticket in the mail. I think I was set up, but it feels a lot different than the guy walking up to you saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's like, so I'm all for
Yeah, and I will back up, 20 years ago, when I got hired on, that reputation was definitely
yeah.
there for sure. It's just that when you go through 2008 was a real hard hit for our community and I-695 and all that kind of stuff where we had those units out there making traffic stops, and it's just really difficult when you have 2 or 3. And I want to get back there some point. And this is a big umbrella of things that I'm trying to hit with our department, get them paid correctly, competitively, get the the staffing up and get all of the different units incentives there so that we can have that robust PD. So now, this has been going on. What's
Just a
that?
quick
Yes, ma'am.
question. Part of that sort of traffic unit, or maybe it's not so much traffic, but you talked about sort of bike patrols, especially for like the Burke Gilman, which can be
Mhm.
an access for folks to flee if they're on foot and things like that. Is that something that's still on your radar, or are you focusing more on more of the traditional traffic approach for
So-
right now?
Where I didn't put it in here and I should have, because it's been so long. We haven't had a bike unit in a long time. And now bikes completely have changed with electric. Our officers are not going to catch these speedy bicyclists. We had that problem back in the day, but for the most part, we would get, the stop sign violations, particularly at 165th. So now what we've been looking at exploring is going through the foundation to get a couple electric bikes, talk to the company that's right next door. So those topics have come up. I just failed to put it in here because it's been so long, but that is definitely something we've talked about. I would like to see some extra patrols of the mall with bikes or officers on bikes, because when we have our thefts and they're running around, you can get somebody on a bike that can chase them down a lot easier than running. And then the bike trail for sure, or the Burke Gilman trail.
Thank you.
So absolutely I have. So now UAV, does anybody else have any questions? Okay. UAV drone operator. Now we do not have this program running just yet. Sergeant Adams is going to go through this program. And I have to say, this has been one of the #1 requests from officers and applicants that have been interviewed. Almost all the agencies around us have these units. And I've been asked to provide one for support with our SWAT team operations. I have to say, I'm excited for this technology. If I was an officer right now, I would jump at the chance to do this unit. Using UAVs with our local agencies have been working out really well. And it almost seems like it's a regular request from agencies, including us, that have dynamic or high priority calls. The problem is those wait times for those calls. And Sergeant Adams will get into those particulars. Again, I'm going to be working with North Sound Police Foundation on getting the equipment needed. I have attended several foundation events, and the first item that's listed is the UAV, and the public has been giving great support. I was at a golf tournament where people come by and then they go, "Hey, what's going on with the foundation?" They see the need. They're like, "Oh, that is so cool." And they just give us money. They're like, get it. It's pretty amazing. So Sergeant Adams, if you want to take it away.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. Thanks for having us tonight. The UAV program, unmanned aerial vehicle is what they're referred to as, or a few other names. But what I really want to talk about is what this is going to look like, not just as a program, but really for the city of Lake Forest Park. We have, as we all know, we have a great relationship the police department does with the citizens. And we want to make sure that this is that people understand the program and that it is palatable. And once I think the program is understood, it will be very, very well embraced once people really understand how we would use it, how it's going to be deployed. So our department has specific goals. These are outlined in our yearly operations plan, and they guide really every facet of what we do. Highlights from these goals include to reduce crime and collision loss in the community, to provide quality services and innovative policing strategies, to provide appropriate resources to employees that foster a safe, ethical, innovative, and knowledgeable workforce, and to provide emergency management oversight for the North Shore Emergency Management Coalition. A UAV program will contribute to supporting all of these goals, which I will address in this presentation. And I will provide real scenarios that have been encountered by our Lake Forest Park officers. So our philosophies at the Lake Forest Park Police Department that we constantly strive to improve and that we seek new and better methods of public service. Chief Harden is amazing at encouraging us to seek new technologies that we can deploy, and not just because it's a really cool tool, but because it really makes sense and will provide for a better and safer environment here in Lake Forest Park, not just for the police department and the citizens, but we also have to understand that this technology really can help add to the safety of the offenders that we're looking for, people that are suspected of crime. We don't want to have violent confrontations, and anything that we can do to mitigate those, we will look for that technology to do so. We also want to make sure that the training is available and truly attainable. This program is not at all something that is, out of our reach. This is a very attainable. The training and equipment is all available locally, and we have partner agencies that have all been working with this. The main thing for us to do with these technology programs is to conduct research. And I know Chief Harden and I both have been researching this since about 2017. So what is a UAV? They're known by different names. SUASs, small unmanned aerial system, and drone is kind of a common term for them. Personally, for me, a drone conjures the image of a fixed wing military aircraft. But the types of drones or UAVs that we use in law enforcement are the same pieces of equipment that are used by hobbyists and engineers. In fact, we are required to operate these under the same FAA regulations as hobbyists. So if there are concerns about how far we go with them, how high we go, we literally follow the exact same regulations. The UAVs, why would we use them? Many reasons. These include search and rescue operations, rapid storm and severe incident damage assessments, tactical operation overwatch, high-risk search warrant operations, suspect apprehension efforts, incident de-escalation and communications with barricaded subjects. There are a couple of photographs up here on this slide that are not Lake Forest Park incidents, but they are things that we encounter. In the right-hand corner, you will see a storm damage assessment of a hurricane scene. We have certainly had weather events here that dramatically impacted the functionality of this city. It's very hard when you have two officers working a graveyard shift, when some massive storm hits, power goes out, to really know what happened, to try to figure out which tree went through which house. What we can do with a UAV is to put one in the air and do a very rapid assessment. In the lower left, you'll see a photograph with it's kind of a black and white image with black figures in various positions. This is a thermal imaging. This is night vision. This is low light and or thermal imaging that you'll see. What this represents, this is a law enforcement operation from another jurisdiction, showing how the camera technologies on these UAVs can penetrate the darkness, can penetrate tree canopies to show the location of personnel, both law enforcement and people we're looking for, and honestly, the innocents. When we're conducting an operation, we always have to take into account whether or not someone's walking their child to school or out taking their dog for a walk. When could we use these? Most commonly, what you'll see is this is going to be for providing overwatch while officers are conducting operations on the ground, whether it's a public assistance type of call or a suspect apprehension call. What I would ask you to imagine is you're an officer and you're now tasked with a bad thing happened. A person is in a suspected area and you have to go find that person, whether it's a dark wooded area. And if we've all been out in Lake Forest Park at night, you know, it's a little dark. And I've personally been on a number of calls where I'm trying to go through someone's backyard and I don't know where I'm at. Okay. It's you can get easily lost in some of these wooded properties. And while we are generally mindful of property boundaries, suspects are not. They will cross through your yards, through the creeks, go into your sheds. And when I'm looking for someone in a dark area, it would be amazing to have something that tells me there's a person here who might be armed, right? There's the eye in the sky. I'll give a quick example. There was an incident in Bothell a couple of years ago that I was involved in, where an officer was killed. And I can tell you that without aerial surveillance, first from the WSP airplane, and secondly by a drone or UAV, we would not have known that suspect was there, and they would have been able to get away. Once we did identify the heat signature, the drone was called in to not only try to establish communications with the subject, which is a great feature of these, but we had such good intel that we could see him counting the rounds in his pistol, really calculating whether or not he wanted to shoot it out with us. Thankfully, he chose not to, and he was taken into custody. But this is the kind of intelligence that we can get that will make the offenders safer, the officers safer, and the public safer. Excuse me. I mentioned the incident de-escalation and communications. The equipment that we are seeking will have communications equipment, have speakers and microphones. It will have lighting on it so that we can illuminate certain areas. Obviously, these can be used to track fleeing vehicles as well, which is kind of a neat thing. In this era of we want to err on the side of caution and not pursue people unless we absolutely have to. These UAVs are equipped with technology that can lock onto a vehicle and track it for a short distance. So the officer doesn't have to pursue, or we can put this in the air and just look for the vehicle that has the really hot heat signature on it. Sometimes a vehicle will strike a curb and the tire comes off. The amount of friction and heat generated from that is something that we can track with the UAVs. Let's see here. I've got a few other examples up here, but the main goal is that we get real-time information to the officers. Sorry, I realize I'm taking a lot of time here. I'll speed up a little bit. We can also use these to conduct interior building searches. There are smaller units that one of which we're seeking that will allow us to go in and actually you can use it to search inside. You can use it to just perch on a rooftop. You can use it to perch on a counter. If someone is barricaded in a room, you can literally just fly it in, drop it on the ground and start talking to them through the door. You don't have to worry about sending a person up to the door with what they call a throw phone. So you have to reach a window, and it's really great technology. A couple other applications. We do get lost child calls. We do get adults with dementia and Alzheimer's that walk away. And we do get calls of dangerous animals that go out and bite people. We have had some water calls where people have drowned or been, we've had swimmers and boaters in distress. And all of these, if we can rapidly deploy these, will give us the overhead intel that we need to find these people and hopefully save them before it's too late. Lastly, there's a diagram here. It's one thing that is really great about these is as these technologies have developed, they also have developed software that allows us to diagram crime scenes and large collision scenes. You're all aware, I'm sure, that we had a shooting a couple of weeks ago. To document both of those scenes, there's ground mapping that's done, it's three-dimensional mapping, but then to have an overhead that we can do really provides better context, especially if we're doing public presentations in court, things of that nature. The main benefit of the UAV, as I said before, is that it gives real-time information to the officers on the ground. This is extremely beneficial. And I can tell you that this is being used in law enforcement every day. As the chief said, this is being used in our region. The Bothell Police Department, King County Sheriff's Office, Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond, Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, Mount Lake Terrace, Linwood, all of these agencies have these. Unfortunately, staffing is small in these units and availability is not the best. I've asked for a drone numerous times on different operations that occur, and they're not available. If we were to add our program, this would not only add to a greater effectiveness for our agency, but it would allow us to aid our partner agencies who don't have this available to them. So why we need this, as I've hopefully explained, is to provide more comprehensive public safety services, to provide a safer working environment for our officers, and to create better collision documentation for roadway engineering concerns. And as the chief mentioned, for officer opportunities, career growth and retention of officers and recruitment is a huge thing. And as I said before, this will make us a better regional partner. So in order to get this program off the ground, we simply have to finalize our UAV policy. We already have this drafted. The chief and I have worked quite a bit on this extensively. And the policy does address the specific guidance for the use of this. Obviously, there are big brother type concerns. People are concerned about their rights. I can tell you that as an over 20-year veteran of law enforcement, the more I work in government, the more I'm concerned about my own rights. Not that we infringe upon rights, but I have realized as my career has grown, just how truly important constitutional protections are, not only under the Fourth Amendment, but under Article 1, Section 7 of the Washington Constitution. We have better protections than are offered federally. Our officers are very well trained in this. And while there is case law that says we can use them under certain, certain circumstances, we will always operate under Article 1, Section 7. We will make sure that our officers will not use them in any way that is outside of what would be, considered normal operations for these. The next step is to establish a program leader. That will be me. I have already been trained in the administration of a UAV or SUAS program. We've already identified our equipment needs, a location of, or a source of grant funds, and we do have quotes already. So once we are kind of all on board with the direction we'll go with this, we will make those purchases. Next will be to train our officers in the FAA Part 107 operator's license, and we will facilitate their certifications. We will operate under the FAA's guidelines and licensing and certification protocols. And lastly, will be to register the equipment that we purchase for this project. Last but not least, as the chief said, this is all going to be paid for by grant funds. We're not asking for anything other than, probably more than anything, just your understanding and your support, which we've always had from you. So thank you all for what you do for us.
Any questions?
Well, I got a question. I don't know if council has a question, but I do. So what is the drone first responder program? And can you describe what Chula Vista does?
Yes, can actually.
This doesn't look planned at all.
Sure. So the Chula Vista Police Department, there are actually now a couple of departments that are working on this. This is a new use of this technology. It's really cutting edge. And this was something that this department and a couple others had to really hash out with the FAA. But the short version of this is, you have a need at your house, you need to call 911 for an emergency response. The dispatch center gets this information gets routed to the DFR, it's drone as a first responder unit. And as this call is coming in, that drone is immediately launched to the origin of that call. It gives eyes in the sky. It gives information before officers can even get on scene. In many cases, it has eliminated the need for an officer to even be dispatched. It has mitigated violent confrontations. It has helped capture more suspects that have committed heinous crimes. And it's a really cool program. We're not looking to do this right now. But maybe put it on your radar. I think we're going to be seeing it in Washington a lot more. Well, not a lot more, but I know agencies that are looking at it. California is kind of pioneering this, and we do follow a lot of the same court decisions that they do. So it's a really neat program. It's a really neat use of the technology, and I don't know. We'll see what it looks like in the years to come.
As you can see that number, 17,000 incidents that they responded to. And I went to a presentation at a conference where Chula Vista
Thank you.
explained this. Well, wait, no, you're not going anywhere just yet.
I'm saying it here.
Chula Vista went and did his, and I'm gonna butcher this story, but basically there was an assault that happened, a fight that was going on at a like AM, PM kind of grocery store or something like that. And they send out the drone gets out there and they can't find any fight. There's nothing going on. So they called the clerk answers the phone and says, hey, we've got a drone out there that's taking a look at what's going on. And they're like, oh, they already left. So now the drone, and they had the person come out, wave to the drone. Oh, that is so cool. Hi, how you doing? And they're talking to each other. But that now, do we need to have officers responding in emergency to everybody's gone? And I really butchered the story, but that's kind of one of those examples they gave. But it's amazing to see what they did. The drones or the UAVs are on top of the police station. When they get the call, they fly right off, go to the call, see if it's needed with absolute police response. It's pretty cool technology. So now, if there's any questions, yes.
Yes, I walk away before the questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. What's your projected time schedule for the next step actions? Do you have,
Yes.
some milestones you're thinking of?
We do, yes. So as I said, we do have quotes already. I went to a presentation done by the company that we're seeking the equipment from, and they have it's a really cool all-inclusive package. It is probably 3 to 4 weeks, they said, for them to manufacture the package and put it together for us. I've already spoken with the training, the company that will seek training through and certifications through. We're looking at probably about 2 months for equipment and training lined up. I would like to see a solid month of officer training with these before they're deployed. So probably about 3 months is kind of my rough timeline.
What about the money?
The money.
Okay, first of all, that's some really good timelines. I don't know if we'll be able to pull that off, but the money's already solid. We're good with the money.
So anytime we're ready,
Yeah,
we
anytime
can get
we're
it.
ready, yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
can
what I
reach
was
out.
asking. Yeah.
Maybe I should say 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months sounds better to
I'll
me.
add
I think 3 months
A lot
sound,
going on in the
Under
PD.
promise, over deliver.
3 months sounded just fine to me. Larry, what can you do here?
Yeah, this seems interesting. I do have a question. So if this would require an officer to operate the drone, would that mean there's one fewer officer on patrol?
When you have an incident, so I would say, honestly, no. And I'll tell you why. You may have one less officer out on a containment position, one less officer talking to a witness or a victim in an incident. How these are going to be deployed, they won't be on regular patrol. This is not going to be, we're just hovering around looking for crime to happen. But what we will do with them is allocate that officer to serve in that function. This is not going to be deployed on every single call where it's a shoplifter and they just happen to run across the parking lot. But we will use them for incidents where people do flee. Probably, it's not been delineated if it will be misdemeanor or felony crimes, but I could see uses for both. It really just depends. But when you have an operation like that where an incident unfolds, you have someone who stays with a victim or with a crime scene, you have witnesses interviewed, and people just start serving various tasks. And we have a great relationship with the surrounding agencies. So if that one officer is now absorbed doing serving the function of a UAV operator, we would simply pull an officer from Shoreline, Kenmore, Bothell, to come in and fill that position.
So to make it really easy, when we get a call to a scene that's happening and we set officer perimeters, I'm an officer that says, go to this intersection. I'm sitting at that intersection, watching this street, making sure nobody runs during those particular areas. That's not that very efficient. If I have a drone and that's my job and I have a view of that entire area, much more efficient for me to do that job to say, hey, I've got this entire area covered. Now we know where the person is going. But that's the way we've always done police work, is set the perimeter of whatever calls is going on.
You know,
I have an officer that can cover that area much better. That's
well,
what
'cause I can tell exact, you know, when you had when the guys got in the house over here and took over, I actually sat with the Mount Lake Terrace, a drone officer, for quite a while, and he just hovered up there and he could see with the infrared everything that was going on. He probably took people from the perimeter and let them do other things. It was pretty amazing. In fact, I actually almost took the drone and the car. I was so impressed. I thought that was
So
actually, be honest, the coolest thing was the drone on the side of the dang cop car. Instead of the dog's head, they have a drone on. It's pretty cool. You know how I feel about it.
Mayor, I can tell you that Sergeant Moss, who runs that program for Mount Lake Terrace, he and I have worked very closely together. We used to work together years ago in Snohomish County.
Yeah.
And when he really started the drone program with Mount Lake Terrace, and they started with nothing. And they are literally just building out their program. It's much more robust now. And the package that we will be using is very similar to what you saw
That
that
was
night.
really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Sort of two questions. One, I know a lot of times you can build your policy off of sort of the national standard policy. Is there a national standard UAV policy yet that you can kind of crib from?
There is.
Okay.
The company that we use for policy management, Lexipol, which I'm sure, okay. So they do have a UAV policy. And we also have regional partners that have made little tweaks here and there to their policies that really make sense for policing in the greater King County area. And so that will be, that's information we're all taking into account. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question I have is would this tool ever be useful for supporting like public works in any of their
100%.
needs, and that you would have that compatibility to be, if
Yeah.
it was available for them?
Yeah, and I assume that is absolutely going to happen if the director of public works said, hey, can we get the drone up to take a picture of this area or get some video? Without question, we would assist. That's just been our nature forever anyway. And we have NEMCO. There is a drone operator within the volunteer group, and they've been doing things for emergency management. So we would partner with them. They partner with us. It's just all about getting together regionally to help each other out. Bothell is our normal partner, you know, on the radio, and I hear the drone requests quite a bit, and they, I know, are trying to get every squad and operator on their crews. So they're trying to get in the 9-10 range of operators. So
Just real one quick.
Thank you.
Does the fire department have their own drone?
I don't know.
They do.
Yeah. because-
Yes, they do have a drone program. It is. I've made requests. It's never been available for law enforcement.
I just was thinking, 'cause
Yeah.
fighting the fire would be great to know what you're coming up against too.
They do. Yeah, they use them
That's
for
great.
finding hotspots for sure.
Yeah. Councilmember French.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing this to us. I really appreciate what you said, Sergeant, about the question of privacy in the constitutional concerns. I think it's a big deal. I think that there's opportunity here with this kind of technology to really save lives and make people safer. And I really do appreciate you guys being forward thinking about technologies. I think it's really important for us to figure out every tool that we can get to keep you guys safe and keep the community safe. One quick thought, talking about technology that advances very quickly. I signed into a letter years ago of engineers who are opposed to using autonomous platforms for weapons, basically. And the technology drones have now been used. People put pepper spray in them and they put other kinds of things. I want to make sure that I know you have very clear lines, Chief, and I just
Very
want to make sure
clear.
that we're always having that conversation, because the opportunities for advanced technology to be incorporated happens so quickly, and it's evolving amazingly fast. And I just want to kind of bookmark that, because I think it's really critical that it's being utilized for safety for the officers and for the community, and not.
Absolutely. I have no intentions. The only day that would ever happen is a different chief is addressing a different council down the road, and what the world would look like back then. But now Absolutely not. I think we're actually behind the eight ball personally, because I looked at this, like I think Sergeant Adams mentioned, in 2017, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to get this going because it was new, and now we're kind of playing catch up, to be honest. Any other questions from council?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I told him there was like, what about tree canopy? We live in Lake Forest Park. I mean, like.
You did good. Jeez, okay. We've talked,
Presentation
we-
addressed so many of those things.
you did great.
know?
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Yeah,
sir.
I think most of these people up here are thinking, yeah, let's move on, and
All right, I'm
if
gonna.
it's free,
speed
we're
up.
all in. I can tell you that much. So
Thanks for us.
thanks, Ross.
All right, so now, again, we do not have a Marine patrol with Lake Forest Park PD. Over the years, we've looked at developing, I mean, I can even remember talking about it with Chief Peterson. But we've never really had public use of the waterfront until now. We currently contract with King County Marine Patrol, and I'd like to have a public safety conversation while the lakefront property is being planned out and built. So Councilmember Bodie, I just want to make sure that we're in that conversation and planning.
We'll have a canoe there for you.
All right. Well, then my officer's gonna be very strong.
And tying a couple threads together, in Europe, they're using drones right now to drop life rings to people.
100%. I think it'd be a
Very
great
cool.
idea to pop out there really quick to say where they're at, whether it's us or it's King County, to
Yeah.
pinpoint where folks are and see what struggles, or maybe they're not struggling. We would know with a unit like that. What our Marine Patrol would look like can range from a patrol boat to jet skis or Sea-Doos to even working with Shoreline Fire and their Marine units and sharing their equipment. I reached out to Chief Cowan, and he said, we've got a couple of units, and if we trained our officers in rescue and we use their equipment, it could range from a lot of different things.
Does Kenmore have a Marine patrol?
They use King County.
They
because
use
they're
King
King County
Okay,
agency.
thank you.
Calling King County Marine Patrol will have, while we have officers that can respond immediately, would probably be a much better option, especially for that speed. One of our officers saw this need and the potential in the future. He built a proposal for Marine Patrol and would have liked to have him here to present that to council, but on October 4th, this officer became a dad again and is out spending time with mom and baby. So
Yay.
he is not here, but I did rip off his slides, and I'm gonna try and get through some of this stuff. Why do we need it? No marine assets on Lake Washington by Lake Forest Park, and we do have a new public park with water access. And our Lake Forest Park border goes all the way to the middle of the lake. I think our city attorney did some work when we were looking at some issues with the lake, and we go all the way out to the middle, which is quite far. Our response time would be much faster, especially year round, as King County Marine Patrol is generally only used from May to September. So how does this benefit the city? The implementation of marine assets along the north end of the lake significantly enhances the city's capability and safety measures. During the summer months, Lake Washington experiences heightened activity with a surge of residents and visitors flocking to the lake for recreational activities. The introduction of marine assets allows for more efficient emergency response, ensuring the safety and security of those utilizing the waterfront. Trained personnel and specialized equipment can swiftly respond to those emergency accidents, distress calls, minimize response time, and potentially save lives. And our officers would love this training and would be a recruitment and retention tool. Efficient municipal code enforcement. So with increased activity, enforcing municipal codes and regulations becomes paramount. Having our own unit would facilitate effective enforcement of municipal codes relating to boating, water safety, and overall public conduct on the water. This promotes a sense of order and adherence to rules, creating a safer environment for everyone. So what is our responsibility? Boating enforcement is a critical component of ensuring safety and compliance of water bodies within our community. We have an entire Lake Forest Park Municipal Code, Title 11, concerning boating regulation that our officers do not enforce because we don't have the resources to enable water access. So for example, verifying proper registration of vehicles, ensuring that all required safety equipment is on board and in good working order, enforcement of laws pertaining to the use of PFDs, thank the Deputy Mayor. Enforcement regarding the operation of vessels in a negligent or reckless manner is vital for securing both the operators and others sharing the water. Enforcement of Municipal Code 11-06030 promotes responsible boating practices minimizing potential accidents due to reckless behavior, and enforcing the laws of boating under the influence. So which is critical to maintaining a safe environment on the water. I do know that my officers would love to jump out on a boat, go cruise during the summer, go make those contacts, find out who's drinking. I know anybody that's been a lake goer knows that there's people out there drinking and then they jump right on that driving wheel and yes, ma'am.
Chief, I must say of all your proposals, I do have the most dubiousness about this one, though I think it would be really fun to be in the Marine
Yeah,
Union.
the
And
Marine
maybe
Patrol,
at some point, when I step down from council, I'll join.
you
the
jump on the
Marine
boat.
Union.
Oh.
But my question is, well, how many times do we call on King County? Really in a year?
So I don't think we call a lot, but
Mhm.
residents call that get directed to them. So we'll
Okay.
get numbers back from them saying they made this many stops, they did this
Mhm.
many things. But King County is a big agency and there is a lot that they cover and we're
Mhm.
Little Lake Forest Park. And so I'm not going to complain about Marine
Mhm.
Patrol, but I think the responsiveness of us and we had the unit and the availability, it would be a lot of work. I don't know exactly what that is envisioned, but I just want to have this conversation because this is the first time that we have this actual public access to water.
Mhm.
And whatever the council and future councils decide that this property is going to look like,
Mhm.
please keep us in mind. And, you know, when I go to Lake Stevens and they have their Marine Patrol unit,
Mhm.
you're safer when you know that that
Mhm.
unit is there and they can respond if something
I'd be
happens.
curious what the incidents say for Kenmore is, because they already have, boating and swimming.
Yep.
So, I don't mean to say, I'm opposed. I mean to say I'm dubious,
Yep, I completely understand. Absolutely.
but it
Do-
would be fun.
Councilmember for your time.
Hi, and thanks, Chief, and thanks, Mayor, for the report. And I'm on the fence on this one because I think last year when we were passing the personal flotation device ordinance, you gave many of the same information. And at that time, you said that the King County Patrol used to have, I think, 3 stations or 3 places where they would store their boat. And now they're down to 1 just down in Renton. So the response time would be huge coming
Yes.
out here. So I'm very much in favor of reducing that response time, obviously, as the lakefront property PROC comes online. But at the same time, do you have any ideas about where we might store some of these marine assets? Because that's going to be an issue too.
So I do have an idea. NUD, North Shore Utilities District, they actually have a boat where they do sewer and those kind of things. They said that we could use their unit that's parked at one of their docks over in Kenmore. So we can have officers rush over, grab the boat and that wasn't going to actually happen, but it was a discussion we had.
Mhm.
So there's something that we can look at with slips there. I haven't gotten to the picture yet, but I will do it now. There are units that we can have that, may be in that area so that citizens that are swimming, they can see, oh, those are the police jet skis, or we can have something in that area that, is covered. This is definitely pie in the sky. There is nothing planned out.
Mhm.
I just wanted council to have this conversation and know when you do all of the other planning, remember to keep the police department and public safety in the conversation, however that looks.
To be real honest, you already have a jet ski lift there. I've looked at it a few times right at the lake and everybody can hear this, I will donate my jet ski, which used to be a state patrol jet ski. And I'm not joking. I
Yeah.
will give it to the city and it'll go 60 miles an hour right across that lake right now. And you can keep it out there on the dock 24/7. The only thing is Lori and I get to go use it once in a while.
Yeah.
So, but I would have no problem to get it going, but you really do have a lift that's already ready to go out there.
And we
so.
will have broader public safety conversations
Good.
with the
Thank you very
department
much.
also for
Yes.
the land base as well as the
Larry?
water.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of echo Councilmember Bodie and that, I'm on board with K9 traffic UAVs, a little more dubious on this. I think I think we should have the conversation. I'd like to see a cost benefit analysis.
For sure.
If we're going to be devoting an officer to be on the lake, that means they won't be available for land-based patrolling. And so just making sure that, what would be the need in both sectors to see like, where can we do the most good?
Yeah, and that's a long conversation, a lot of planning out, like how would we envision that? Could it be that 4 or 5 officers are trained in this unit? And then when they're on duty, then they're available to jump out to that jet ski when we get that call, but they're actually working in the city normal calls. And then maybe during the summer months, we put them on an extra patrol and we say, hey, we're going to set this aside for overtime. And the city council says, hey, we'll set off, $5,000 to do some overtime for this particular summer period. And then officers go out just like they do with TZT and other events like that. So I don't have all the answers. This is, and I'm not even asking for this. This is really just a conversation to plant seeds.
Lindsay's
to
over there
remember.
rolling her eyes. Geez, we.
I know.
It's this guy.
Yes, sir.
So we're all excited about boats
Yeah, right.
and how much fun they are. It seems like there's an opportunity to talk to Kenmore or Bothell.
North End, yeah.
Well, Bothell doesn't have anything because they don't have any water.
They don't have any water.
No, they have the slough and that's a little bit different. And talking to Kenmore, it's a King County thing. So that's kind of why we're this a little bit of anomaly up here. And I think Shoreline Fire is actually a really good partner because they would respond to anything that's in Kenmore and us. And it could be just as simple as we just train officers that can respond to their equipment. Because they've got, I can't believe, a couple jet skis. They have a small little lake that they cover that he had talked about. But we have not gotten in-depth conversations. This is just a
Yeah.
really high level, keep in mind. Because I'm when I first got here, there were officers like, hey, let's get a Marine Patrol. But back then there was really not a whole lot of use. It was, we wouldn't even know where to go other than maybe the Civic Club to go out on the water. So I'm going to wrap this up because I think we've gotten through most of this Marine Patrol. I know it was a lot. There's a lot of moving parts in our police department. Tonight, I hope you gained a lot of insight into our specialty and specialized units and answer any questions you may have. Some units are currently working, some are being built out. And like the Marine Patrol, it's more of a future possibility and a conversation a few years down the road, or a couple of years down the road. I don't know when this park will actually get off the ground and done, but please keep public safety in the conversation when planning out the park.
Thank
So
you, Chief.
good.
You made, yep.
Any other
good
questions?
job.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh,
Tracy's got.
Yes.
I have one that's because I'm not sure where it would fit. So the police department, like all the other police departments in the country, received that heightened awareness of an incident potentially happening due to the violence in the Middle East this evening.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, would one of these specialty units be assigned that kind of thing?
well, okay. If immediate answer, investigations, and my detective was with, I think you were in the room too. We're on a call with Homeland Security today and basically on the nationwide, I think it was nationwide, or was it just our region? Yeah. And then they went over the threats and what was going on. I'm not going to broadcast them here publicly, but basically just being aware. So right off the bat, to answer your question, investigations and getting that intelligence and that information. And then we internally go, okay, do we have synagogues in our city? Do we have any kind of things that would happen? A mosque is right in Shoreline across our border. We look at those kind of issues and then start planning out for those kind of things. I could be here all night because I can probably get each one of those specialty units that can fit into some kind of a category with those kind of things.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
It's unfortunate
Yes.
that that is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks. Chief, just real quickly, you mentioned the K-9 unit. What kind of timeframe are we talking about to get something like that stood up again? Because it is such a valuable resource in the community.
So I put out an administrative communications just after we retired Hector.
Mhm.
And so my immediate thing is I'm going to go in and resend it and just say, okay, we're going to be starting to look, and then I want proposals to come in. And then we look at the proposal and say, okay, who can do this? How is this going to look? We still have a patrol vehicle that has the cage in there. Do we need to get a newer unit and explore all that? I would like to get it done by the end of the year, but there's a lot of things going on.
Sure.
NORCOM is my biggest project right now that I want to get through. There's a lot of things going on. I would like to get it done. I'm going to say 6 months. 6 months into next year, so that I have that time frame. But you all know my number one goal is to get staffed up. And we are on paper fully staffed, but I still need to look at new people that are coming in, and we're still running into the same problems where I've got good applicants and they're not making their backgrounds, and it's just putting us behind. So I understand that the budget that you have gone through, where we've looked at the extra 3 officers, but I haven't even touched that because we can't get them on board. So while it's good financially, it's not good for our future. So still working on all these things. I still need to get the detective position filled too, because he's approaching, I think, in the 70 range in cases. And that's not even, it's not even workable. So any other questions?
Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much. Ross, you can go home.
Now.
Chief, you can't. Okay, council, I think we're on to the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. On to ordinances and resolutions for action. Ordinance 23-1277, adopting final development regulations relating to tree canopy preservation enhancement. City Administrator Hill, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before you, well, let's back up a little bit. So you remember through Ordinance 23-1271, you adopted interim tree regulations to 1614. This was looking at comprehensive regulatory program for large scale projects, necessitating removal of trees within the right of way. This is not only the Sound Transit project, but this also applies to our roundabout project, which we've been assessing what the impacts to that are, along with our new wall codes. So what is before you tonight is an ordinance to adopt these as permanent regulations. There's the, sorry, lost my train of thought. We've clarified that the funds may be used to enhance forested areas in the city. That's in the code. The right-of-way offsite corridor replanting area map that was submitted by the tree board, they took that back, had some discussions. The updated map is included. One thing I want to point out, and they did at their last meeting, as Councilmember Goldman reported, had a quorum. No changes came forward, but when they recommended the map, there were only 3 members. So it was a nice recommendation from the 3 members there, but they did not have a quorum. I have not heard anything to the contrary since they had their last meeting. The other item is just some clarification of the list of street trees, replanting more clearly labeled, a plus sign showing that trees could grow above 30 feet. There was a little bit of question for the tree board. One of the big discussions that's come up recently is the tree list, and there's some discussion amongst the tree board that it might be too limiting. They had some discussion about maybe having a tree list, or as the arborist, upon review finds acceptable trees. I had a little bit of concern with that. I don't want to give total leeway to the arborist. It's nice to have something that kind of confines the decisions they're making, makes it something that the applicant can rely upon. And so I think what the tree board is going to do, I've had some email exchanges lately, they're going to go back in this winter and take a look at that list, maybe enhance that, add to it, and bring that back to council for some further consideration. But the ordinance is here. It's got the track changes in there. And if you have any questions, either myself or Attorney Pratt will take a stab at answering those questions for you.
Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will recuse myself from the discussion. This is a continuation of the interims. While I don't see a direct conflict, I am an employee of Sound Transit, so I will, to avoid any appearance of conflict, I will recuse myself.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember.
Just to clarification, we did, and this is more for city attorney, we had the hearing back in June when we don't have to do a new hearing to adopt this tonight. I just want to make sure I understand that correctly.
There's a pretty limited number of edits that were made since you passed it. The offsite replanting plan, that area that was added has always been in the map. And so always up for discussion. We added a plus to the tree code list.
I wouldn't find that to be a public hearing matter. And then adding that you could enhance with the money received for offsite replanting. To me, that's a clarification. That was a very broad, pretty broad section of the code, but there were some concerns that specifically could be used for enhancement. And so we put that in there, but I would say that doesn't need an additional public hearing.
Consistent with what the public saw in
Yes.
June. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Yes. Oh, Councilmember Goldman first.
Thanks. And I'll just kind of echo and just try to be a conduit for the tree board. They are on board with these changes. I mean, their big concerns were making sure the map was a bit more accurate in terms of what parts of the community are tree deficient at the moment. And also making sure that this money, the first priority is to plant trees, either in corridor or in other needed areas. But if money is paid as an in lieu of fee, that could be used for maintenance, ivy removal, that sort of thing, to make sure that our current trees are thriving. So I'd say the tree board is on board. They did flag a couple of things. One was the tree list. Another, there was a bit about tree permits. I think they're gonna bring that back. I don't want to get too far off topic, but when the tree inventory is done, they're going to be doing a deep dive in there. So hopefully either by the end of the year, or beginning of next year, they're going to be making a series of recommendations regarding tree diameters, and they will likely kind of roll in thoughts on the tree list into that, as a package of recommendations for us.
Councilmember Fairtime.
And thank you. And I think Councilmember Goldman actually answered partially the question, but are there any changes in the tree list? Because I noticed it was in the packet and there weren't any obvious red or orange marks there.
Thought there was a plus added.
Just a plus added in the
It was
title.
in the text of the code, right?
Oh, okay.
I could, if you like, I could comment on that.
Go ahead.
So the concern was there are some species of trees that are listed in the 15 to 30 foot list, which can potentially grow bigger than 30 feet. And so they just wanted to clarify that as long as it's in the list, it's allowable, even if potentially that species could get taller than the number that's listed there. So it's really just more of a clarification. I think the reason that those two pages are there, that there's 4 sections of the tree list. 2 of them, I believe, are going higher than 30 feet. And so it's just saying that it's these 2 shorter tree sections that are allowed, and the taller, the 30 and above, are not allowed. So just kind of clarifying, these are the ones that are in the corridor.
Anybody else, Councilman? Are we moving this tonight, Phil? Would you like this?
That's always an option.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up for Councilmember Goldman to maybe clarify. Because we have the alternate planting locations throughout the city, was the tree board's intent that the limited height be trees used within the right of way, and that the whole tree list be available for use in those extra planting sites that would be out on private property? Was that a discussion, clarification that the tree board had?
I think I have to be careful how I answer this, because there was a discussion, but there were only 3 board members.
There was no decision.
So no decision was made on that. But yeah, there were, people were sort of a bit ambivalent about, should the shorter restrictions apply strictly in the street versus in the whole 1,000-foot corridor. And so they didn't reach a conclusion. I could see going either way on this. I mean, currently it's written that it's for the whole corridor. I could see saying that, maybe if you're 2 blocks away, you shouldn't have that height restriction. But I also would be mindful that might be a more substantive change that might, and I defer to our city attorney, if that would be a more substantive change that would require a public hearing.
I think that is a new concept.
Mhm.
We haven't
Okay.
discussed.
It sounds like if they're considering sort of the response from the tree inventory, that could be something we can address at that time. I think what we have here is the more limited version, where it's just limiting to 30 foot wherever you're replanting. I think that's a good place for us to start, and I'd be happy to support this.
And sorry to clarify, so the 30-foot limit, I believe, would be just in the 1,000-foot right-of-way corridor. If you're replanting in another neighborhood far away, I don't believe there's any limit there. So I believe it's
Okay,
so priority 1 is 1,000-foot corridor. Priority 2 is other needed areas. I believe the 30-foot limit is only for priority 1. Priority 2 is any tree.
It's huge.
okay.
I have to check that.
Big tree.
I think if that's, I mean, if that's the case, that's still, I think I would be okay with probably moving this tonight unless my colleagues have any other concerns. Okay,
Well, with that, I would like to go ahead and move for adoption ordinance 23-1277, adopting final development regulations related to tree canopy preservation and enhancement.
second,
And moving second, Counselor, do I have any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance 23-1277, please say aye.
aye.
Any nays? Passing unanimously, 5-1, one abstaining and one somewhat where around the world, we don't know where. So that, I guess we'll move on to any other new business, council, anything else, any other business? Yes.
Meeting schedule, colleagues, the question arose earlier this week, whether it is necessary to hold a budget and finance meeting on Monday relative to discussion of the mayor's proposed annual budget adjustment. What is your thinking about this? If there are further questions, happy to have it. If not,
Councilor Lebo.
So maybe you can refresh my memory on what you see as the schedule for adoption. Because there were questions in this evening's meeting that would be useful to review and understand, particularly with legal advice.
my understanding, and Director Vaughn can correct me if I'm wrong, is we're going to be considering adoption, I believe is November, let me get the calendar, 12th, 9th. On November 9th, which is a Thursday, and that will also be the time that we consider setting the levy rate as well as the various perfunctory things that we have to do at the end towards the latter part of the year. If there are questions, is there enough time, Director Vaughn, to respond to the questions by Monday? If that arose tonight?
Well, I guess the other question would be, what is the schedule for meetings between now and November 9th?
Mr. Hill?
So there is a cow scheduled for the 23rd. We also could do it as a work session from 6 to 7 before the meeting on the 26th. So we've got a couple of opportunities. I think Monday might be a little bit tight to get some of the information that was requested tonight.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay. Colleagues, any other thoughts? I want to make sure that we're not, since we have the opportunity to do that meeting, if you would like to, totally happy to do it. I just want to make sure that we're not wasting everybody's time. Okay,
I think it's better to
okay,
skip that one.
all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So the meeting on Monday is canceled.
Okay, you want to excuse Philippa while you're here?
Oh, yes, I'd like to go ahead and move to excuse Councilmember Cassover.
Second,
It's been moved second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
nay,
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to council committee reports. Have we had any council committee? I think just budget and finance, which we just that. Council member reports. Yes. Everybody.
So I'd like to follow up on my email, passing on the planning commission meeting information. And one of the topics I just wanted to follow up on is our consultants are going to be developing another draft of the housing analysis, which is going to drive a lot of where there are gaps and what we have to address in the comprehensive plan. And the draft transit related plan is also going to be developed, though there isn't even a draft of that yet. And the reason why I'm bringing them to your attention is once those are completed, the council isn't going to really see the comprehensive plan for quite a while, and yet those reports will be completed. So what I'd like to suggest, and I know I'm surprising our city administrator here with this, is that when we do have still draft, semi-complete drafts of those documents, that we discuss them in a council work session, so that if we have any requests for additional information, or if we have some questions about the nature of the analysis or the data that's being used, that we can take care of that now, rather than find out, a year down the road that we wish we had made some changes in those reports. So that's my suggestion, is that when we have a sufficient, close to final draft, that we have a discussion so the council can weigh in and see if there are any other information needs we think would be useful for the comprehensive plan. So is that okay, City Administrator Hill? Yeah, I think just a session at a cow, and I don't think we need the consultants there. I think we can walk through them with your assistance in mind, unless there are follow-up questions of a much more technical nature, in which case we could get someone on Zoom available to us. So that was the first thing. The Planning Commission is making, the consultant is making good progress. There's now a public participation plan. There's a website. There's a survey in process. So the comprehensive plan is moving along well. Related to that, at the SCA PIC meeting that Tom and I attended, one of the issues that's coming up from the cities is, can the state legislature please stop making changes in land use provisions so we can get our comprehensive plans done? They don't think that'll go over too well, but that's what they're thinking. And then related to that, I've already told Councilmember French I would raise this. There are a number of legislative proposals that are being considered, and we have some in our legislative agenda as well, but SCA and AWC have them as well, and they're to raise the 1% cap and to address the REIT tax, and I think there are other provisions that relate to sharing the state money a little more generously. And one of the points that AWC's representative made is that we really need to get to our legislators before the session starts to make sure that they're aware of both our land use / housing concerns, but even more important, our budget concerns. So I'd like us to consider whether at some point, when it's an appropriate time, that a group of us would meet with our state legislators, either together or one-on-one, and have a budget briefing at least, and possibly something on housing diversity. I am concerned that the way to make housing fit with Lake Forest Park is a little bit related to design guidelines and things that would go through permit processes. And yet there are continued efforts to, quote, streamline permit processes and give cities less discretion to include conditions. So there is some interplay there that I just wanted to flag that I'm concerned about going forward. So at least on budget, I'm rambling, at least on budget, if we could give some thought to when we would want to do that, who we would want to do that, and in what kind of process we would want to do it. I don't really have a specific proposal, but I will think about it myself as well. That's all I wanted to flag.
Yes.
Just following up, thank you, Mayor. As Councilmember Bodie indicated, we both attended the SCA PIC last night, and there was quite a bit of discussion about sort of this moving target when it comes to regulations and the comp plan. It's sort of like you have to pin something down in time and say, this is what it is, and set your regulations, and then the regulations keep moving on. So I hope that the voices of all the cities, both through the SCA and the Association of Washington Cities, the legislature will listen and kind of put maybe I don't know, aggregate some of these things into a bundle at one period of time so we can consider them rather than kind of on a rolling basis. The other consideration is the funding for these things. We've been talking about that forever, that they put together these pieces of legislation and then they come up with funding for helping the cities a little bit sort of after the fact. And so that's been a conversation amongst a lot of the cities as well. Council members, that there has to be money put aside for these various things and in advance, not after the facts when the cities are trying to scramble again. And that wasn't really all I had.
Okay. Councilmember Freitag.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I was at the let's see, the King County Cities Climate collaboration. It's basically K4C for short. And we had an in-person meeting actually at the county building in downtown today, and it was neat. The question on point that was asked most to me while we were just milling around was, what's your city doing about the whole, HB 1110 thing? And so, yeah, it was interesting. There's a wide variety of strategies people are trying to use, and a lot of people are still trying to figure out how the law applies to them, of course. All right, so in terms of the actual things that happened at the meeting, there's a huge pot of money available for both climate mitigation and resilience. And as one of the Department of Commerce people said, it's a once in a lifetime kind of offer. And for instance, the EPA is just about to roll out the final rules for Solar for All, which is $250 million for people in various cities to basically get solar on their roof. And so that's kind of the scale on which the money is being doled out. Now, particularly interesting to us, the state investments include BESS, which I learned stands for Battery Energy Storage Systems. So a lot of you may have heard that we can actually build these huge battery units that could basically be brought in during a power outage, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of safety issues that people have concerns about, and there are a lot of siting issues that people have concerns about. But nevertheless, the state is starting to put in rules about those sorts of things. There's a couple of bills coming up on that in the next legislative session. But the point is that we could basically be in line to apply for a grant. There's $70 million allocated to site these at on a much smaller scale than you may have heard of in the news. So that would literally power this building, for instance, during a power outage. Another one that's interesting is basically there's another 80 million that the state has invested to literally put heat pumps in your community. So again, something that would be really helpful for our residents who are thinking about this. Overarching over all this is that there is a bill that's being dropped in the next legislative session that will have a one-stop navigator where if you have a question about a heat pump or you have a question about solar or anything to do with climate regulation, you just go there as opposed to every city trying to answer every single question, which I know puts a lot of strain on our staff here. So I think that those are some of the things that I pulled away from it. Different cities are doing different things in terms of what their interests are. Like Shoreline mentioned that they are really interested in getting the new standards for clean buildings applied to retrofitting older buildings, because right now a lot of them only apply to new buildings. Mercer Island is interested in incentivizing solar homes and actually keeping track of vehicle miles traveled, which came up with one of my favorite acronyms for the day, which is RUC, which is road user charge. So because of the fact that the gas tax only applies to selling gasoline, of course, with more EVs, there's going to be less revenue to actually apply to the roads. So as a consequence, there has to be another alternate funding model to keep our roads infrastructure going. All right, and then finally, the Issaquah basically is interested in a forest carbon credit program, which may apply to us as well. So the idea is that that would basically fund things like the Miyawaki Forest Project that you may have heard about at Shoreline Historical Museum. And so this is an intensive forest that you grow in small patches of land, which is what we've got around here. And the idea is that within 10 years, you could get basically a healthy carbon sequestering forest. So these are some of the ideas that were tossed around at that. So if you have a chance to look at the notes for that meeting, there's a lot of different wonderful sources of funding for right now that are coming online within the next year.
Councilmember Fortani, the heat pump money, is that something that a city would apply for and then our citizens would apply to us for the heat pump money, or individual citizens? apply for that money to some central state place? Do you know that much detail?
Yeah, unfortunately, the fellow from the Department of Commerce had literally only half an hour to cover all these different programs.
goodness.
So he didn't go quite into the weeds that far on it. But my impression is that it would probably be administered to the Department of Commerce and it'd be their rules. So whether it's cities applying or individual people applying, it's unclear to me.
Yes, because certainly if your city has to apply for it first and then your citizenry can apply, then I would want us to do that and make sure we had administrative staff covered as part of that grant. But that, I think our community would be very responsive to that, especially if it can be done as retrofits. I know I'd be interested, so.
Me too.
Just one question, Councilmember Furtani. So the money that you're mentioning, the 70 million for power units, does that include like hydrogen fuel cells or is it only for batteries?
Okay, for some reason, and I was not in on the joke, when the concept of the hydrogen hub was mentioned, everybody laughed. And I kind of felt left out because I wasn't really sure why they were laughing, but my impression is that that's not part of that. That this
Okay.
is literally basically a lithium storage battery type of units.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
We done? Okay, Councilman Golden.
Yes, thanks. I attended 2 meetings. The first was the tree board, most of which was dealing with the tree code that we just adopted tonight. So thank you. The second topic, somebody stole my thunder because they also discussed Miyawaki forests at the Shoreline Historical Museum. And they're interested in seeing other locations in LFP that would be suitable for, especially on some like the really tiny parcels that you can't really do much else with. They're working with our city clerk on making the website more readable, especially when it comes to tree regulations, tree permits, so that it's easier for the public to understand. And they're very concerned about membership because right now there are 5 of them and a quorum is 4. And it seems like one of the 5 might be stepping down next month, at which point there would only be 4 members on the tree board. So if anybody is absent, they lose quorum. So they are concerned about how to recruit more members. Second meeting was Seashore. With that, the first part was about the legislative agenda. I guess that kind of dovetails into what we've heard earlier. In particular, are there transportation related projects that we do or don't need anymore? For instance, talking about the Burke Gilman connector, the roundabout, general maintenance of 104. So these are things that we asked for last year. Which of those are still relevant, which are which are no longer relevant, so that we can amend the legislative priorities accordingly. There's also a presentation from PSRC about road safety. The gist of it was that we're going in the wrong direction in terms of number of injuries and fatalities. After that, honestly, it feels like it's the 3rd time I've heard this presentation where it's all about them making plans and coming up with a master plan. And I'll be honest, I was getting kind of disillusioned because it felt like they just spend all their time planning and they don't actually do anything.
That's government.
So I will admit, the meeting was 7:30 in the morning. I was tuning out a little bit for that, but then I perked up when we were talking about the legislative agenda. So that's what I attended.
Okay, anybody
Mr.
else?
Mayor, if I could add something. Some of our residents have met with Sound Transit recently or received slides from them on the Q jump concept, which is something I think our community really should be supporting because the lesser impacts and yet the balance of transit benefits makes a lot of sense. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of detail forthcoming. It was more conclusory. But for council members who would be interested, I believe those slides are available. Council member French and Foratani also attended that meeting and I wasn't there. So if you wanted to add anything, I just wanted folks to be aware that there's ongoing conversation and that I do think that as we get more information and we've ourselves attended meetings with Sound Transit and they're sharing information that we should consider as a council with John Lebo recused supporting in a formal council letter the Q jump concept, but that's premature for today's meeting. I just want us to be aware that there's ongoing discussion. I'm increasingly personally convinced that the there would still be some impacts, because they take up real estate. But on balance, the lesser impacts and the not that much lesser transit benefits make sense to me. So I think we've learned a lot in the last few months compared to the time that went before. So the engagement with Sound Transit has been valuable. But I myself am coming to some conclusions from that. And so some further discussion on that would be appropriate going forward.
Just to, I'm sorry.
I have a question for Councilmember Bodie. So I was a bit out of the loop. I didn't find out this meeting was happening until the day after it happened. So if you do have those slides, I would like to see them, but perhaps you could send them to city staff and they could be added to the city's website on the BRT project.
Sure.
Do you have them? I think I checked. I actually checked yesterday with the city administrator to see if he had gotten them. So yes, and that it was, I think it started out as a meeting with core and stewardship, and council members French and Furatani got invited.
Yeah, just if I may, on point, we were as individuals, we were invited to attend that meeting. It was challenging to say the least. The slides, you can take a look at the slides. There was also analysis that is pretty rudimentary. I would say that I just received today. I think Mr. Hill may have received it as well. If you didn't, Phil, I'd be happy to forward it on to you. That were supposedly attached to that PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure if we actually saw that at the time. It was definitely pun intended, a complete alignment of objectives and 2 hours and 10 minutes of sort of staring at each other across the table, not getting anywhere. So I think there were some really excellent questions that were asked by members of the Stewardship Foundation as well as the core group. I don't think the answers were very satisfying, to say the least, and I think I'm being pretty generous in that capacity.
And on point, I think the perception that nothing substantive happened is correct. But I think the more of these meetings we have with the Sound Transit planners, I think the more we get across that our community is very concerned about this project and that we have the expertise to back up some of the things that we say. I think we have a very, very bright group of people who live along that corridor and throughout the city that have looked at this problem a lot. And I really appreciate the time and effort that they're putting into it to basically make our community more livable. And, the fact that every single meeting, I think we crumble another wall. And I think that's why it's important, even though it seems like we're making no progress, to keep these contacts going. So I really encourage those of you who are watching this out there, if you have not spoken to Sound Transit or sent them a letter, do it. I think we need to humanize this problem a bit more.
Well said.
I agree. That was exactly my point, that even if we don't feel we've gotten to an outcome in the engagement, I feel we've been learning a lot and our community's educated us and vice versa. And we've learned information from Sound Transit that fits into the whole of a better solution.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess a couple things. I think the joint meeting the other night with Kenmore and Shoy was great, but I'd rather we do it when we can actually have a meeting. We're all not sitting around for 45 minutes eating. I think it'd be a good idea to maybe do an hour and a half meeting sometime when it's not somebody else's council meeting, because I think we all heard some pretty good stuff there. Number two, you guys, eventually we're gonna have to think about getting a new arborist, and I'm gonna strongly suggest that we kind of figure out before an arborist goes out to deal with the citizens, we need to sit down with them, because our last two arborists, as they were crying in front of me, were both really upset because they had no clue what they're supposed to do, how the council wants, what the city wants and what people want. We need to figure out a way to educate our next arborist, if we can find one, so we can help them do their job and know exactly what we're coming from and what we want to see. Third thing is, when we were done with talking to our lobbyists the other day, I brought up kind of the elephant in the room that nobody likes to talk about, but we have a seriously fentanyl problem in this state. It's destroying Seattle. I see it every day. So I asked our lobbyists, I asked Shelley, if there's any talk on anything on anybody's radar about the problem and how we're going to approach that, because I think it is the root cause of most of the reasons my shop gets broken into, a lot of our homelessness. And there is none. So Chief, I just forgot to tell you this. I invited her to ask our representatives to come and go for ride-alongs with our police department so they can see what reality is about. And she thought that was a great idea. And so I'm gonna work that, but we really, it's time. There is something in the room that nobody, I know it's a hard problem, but it really is causing a lot of angst, and it's coming our way. It's getting closer, and that incident with the motorhome, it keeps coming this direction. And I do believe every option you can give us to help the citizens in Lake Forest Park, but we are not going to get anywhere unless the state opens up their eyes and realizes that there is a problem. So sorry, that's kind of where I was at. I just get frustrated because I told Tom, heard this the other day. I had a gentleman at the barber shop across the street from next door to my gas station, was passed out. The police came, broke out his window. He was just on drugs. They said they couldn't do him anything. The next morning, the barber found them dead. And that's sad. It's just not right. That's not the way we should have to live. So I'm a
Along
little
those
bit,
lines, Chief, I'd like to, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that the chief and his team are doing a great job, because when I talk to people in the community, I read the police reports and I see the number of fentanyl related incidents in every single report. And yet when I talk to members of the community, it's a little bit invisible to them because our police department
Well,
is
yeah.
doing such a good job. So
A lot of
it's,
work to keep
it's,
that invisible.
I just want to say that people are surprised when I describe what's happening in and around our community and at town center.
maybe we should have a ride-along program for every single
Yeah.
citizen in the city.
And don't forget to the federal government's offering free Narcan antidote. And you can go online and you can get it, and it's at no cost. And it's important to have that out there because.
But I did read the chief's report about how, even 2 doses of Narcan weren't revitalizing someone.
Yeah, that's bad. And then, okay, anybody else have some cheery news?
Thanks,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
You guys did a great job, and we have our city administrator's report.
Yeah, I just have one quick item to update you on. So at your next council meeting, we're going to be bringing forward a new contract for tree removal services. You'll remember last year in December, you approved a contract for $100,000 for Pat's Trees. And we're at $97,000 already of that contract. 42 trees so far had to be taken down by the Public Works Department through Pat's Trees. Figure $2,000 to $5,000 a tree. We're out of money. So Andy has gone out, he's done the bid process. We'll get those back next Wednesday and get that on your packet. But we would be asking for action that night, and we're going with $150,000 this time because we're not even making it a full year. And we've got several trees waiting for us to loop back and take care of them. Not imminent threats, but they are dangerous trees that need to come down, and we are responsible as a city. So other than that, everything else is in the CA report.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, council, thank you. Have a great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Is that?
Is it just like a
I believe so.
Oh, you
background? Is it that swirly thing?